Hello Clarkston, I'm Rod Rock, Superintendent of Schools, and this is Real Learning, where we showcase the excellent learning and teaching that happen every day in the Clarkston Community Schools. Today I'm fortunate to have as my guest Mr. Ryan Eisele, who is a Clarkston High School language arts teacher. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
I grew up in Jackson, Michigan, where I went to Jackson Lumen Christi, where I played football and caused trouble and wrote poetry. And then I went to community college for 2 years, which was, I think, one of the better decisions I've ever made. I was able to do more small environment learning and really figure out how I learn and take education more seriously. Transferred to Western Michigan University, where I got my undergrad in teaching, double major, double minor, and then I went to Oakland University for master's in reading.
Well, that's a little bit different path with community college than sometimes we think of teachers taking, so it's great for people to know that that's really worked out well for you.
It's a great experience.
I had some community colleges in my background too, and I'm glad I had those experiences. So what is your philosophy of learning, and how did you arrive at that?
More than anything, probably passionate experience. So I bring passion to the classroom. I try to help my kids have passion about their learning, to be excited about what we're doing. And I really want it also to be applicable, that they understand the meaning of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's important in their life, what they can do with it. And on top of that, I want it to be hard. I want it to be difficult. I want them to struggle through it and figure it out, and have it be worth it. And not a struggle because we've really loaded them down with work, but maybe it's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, that they've got something out of it. They didn't just jump through a lot of hoops because they're playing the game of school. So I came to that just through experience. Education has changed so much, and my experience in the classroom, networking with other teachers, staying current with what's out there and how kids are changing, our society is changing. You know, I think I did things more traditionally when I first started, but the world changes quickly. So, and I think to survive in this world, you need to make sure that you, it's not content anymore. Content can be reached really easily. It's other skills, thinking and problem solving.
So what does that philosophy look like in your classroom?
Probably more or less projects and presentations. And performing outside the classroom. So taking it outside the classroom. It's not just we do these things in class and then we forget about it. We take, for instance, individual oral presentations that we do as an IB type of assessment, but we do them with the sophomores. We're currently doing them right now. They're taking an idea from the literature that applies to their life or our society, and they're doing a presentation all on their own, and they're showing, here's the book and here's the quotes, but here's what it has to do with morals and ethics, here's what it has to do with social media, so they're taking, even though it's older literature, you know, 20s and 30s type of stuff, or older, and they're showing how it actually applies to them and their thinking and how they navigate this world with that information.
So you talked a little bit about your passion in the classroom. What is your passion in life and in general, and how did you find it?
I think my biggest passion is being a dad. I mean, my kids, and I'm intimately involved in their lives and their education, and constantly teaching them at home. And that's changed kind of who I am in the classroom too, because now as a dad I look at the kids as my kids, and I think about, you know, what kind of experience do I want my kids to have in school, and try to replicate that. But probably for my passion for teaching came from Miss Bashara's class, 7th grade literature, where I usually caused more trouble than learned. But one day I was looking around, and she had all my goofball friends totally engrossed in classic literature. And I was engrossed, and we were having conversation. And these are kids who I wasn't quite sure knew how to read, but they were into it. And I recognized the impact that she had on everybody, and I wanted to do that. And that only developed further as the years went on, when, you know, like my passion for poetry came from Mr. Molinaro, who was a football coach and a poetry teacher just like me. And I put a lot of heart and effort into the poetry and turned it in. Was super scared because he was my football coach. Like, what is he going to say about this? And he just wrote, well done, stud, on my poetry. And I knew you could do both, right? You could do coaching and you could do poetry and teach. So it was those type of experiences, I think, drove my passion in the right direction.
So you had some wonderful role models as teachers and as coaches, and you're doing the same thing now for kids.
Yeah, I hope.
So what is your most meaningful moment as a teacher in the classroom?
In Clarkson? There's honestly too many to count. I mean, I have dozens a day, thousands over the years. I think I'm most proud of underdog victories, where students come into my classroom and they don't think they can, that they've never done an honors class, or they've struggled in reading, or they can't do presentations, and helping them to realize their full potential, you know, helping them to, by the end of the year, be confident in the things that they're doing. When they walked in my classroom, they weren't confident at all. So I think those are probably some of my more proud victories, I suppose.
So some of the same things you mentioned with your teachers in terms of them seeing things in you and inspiring you.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
kids bring out that they maybe don't think they can do things, and you help them find that voice, which takes us to the next question. You give kids a lot of opportunities in our community with the Poetry Slam and with TEDx and with some of the projects you're doing in your classroom and setting up, I believe you brought some kind of a table saw in or something like that.
Yeah.
And you just give kids many opportunities to develop their voices and to share them. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that works?
I think more than anything, it's fun, and the students want to do it. You know, these things like TEDx and Poetry Slam, I mean, kids thrive when they're passionate about it, and you're giving them a stage and a voice to do things that they wouldn't normally do. You're teaching them things that are maybe non-traditional, and I really don't like hearing from, whether it's other teachers or kids say it themselves, like how they try to separate the real world from what they do. You know, that this is their real world.
Sure
you know,
is.
the school is the real world. This is what prepares you for the next level, and everything counts. You know, everything they do counts. It counts now, it affects their future, and seeing kids thrive with that passion and knowing that it translates outside the classroom, I think is what drives me to like continue these projects. They're a lot of time. They're a lot of time and energy, and sometimes there's failure, and sometimes there's heartache. But in the end, watching kids step up as leaders and do things that they're proud of is important to me. So,
Do you really have a table saw in your classroom?
not a table saw. I have a chop saw.
Okay.
And a circular saw and power drills.
So kids are making stuff?
Yeah, we recently we did. I realized my IB kids are really smart. Many of them have never done anything like that, and so we wanted to develop a piece of art to display that would show themes from a novel we read. So they designed. And they went through the whole designing engineering process, and they drew schematics, and they brought in lumber, and I brought in the tools, and I taught them all the safety stuff first, of course, but then they did trial and error, and they figured out whether or not their design worked. And when they put it together, it was a three-dimensional interactive piece of art for seniors where they could put their realizations about themselves on a piece of paper and in the box. And the box had statements on it that are similar, as well as pieces of mirror that they had broken up. So, and that idea evolved over the course of 5-6 weeks. And in the meantime, kids are learning how to make things.
That's wonderful. So I know that you took a trip out to San Diego and you were at High Tech High. What did that experience mean to you? I know I didn't ask you that in the script, but
it changed me. It honestly changed me. That project that I just mentioned was a result of that. Several other projects since then was a result of that. High Tech High was inspirational in the sense that not just because it wasn't traditional and it was change, because change isn't always good, but what the kids were doing with their education was inspirational. So to see that they could do cross-curriculum stuff and still, there wasn't walls, there wasn't classrooms, there wasn't bells. They were they were bringing everything together in a meaningful way, and it changed me. It made me realize that, you know, I think there's barriers we can still breach that are good for the kids.
So, building on that, what do you think are the most important dispositions or skills that kids need to really be able to achieve their dreams?
Probably perseverance. You know, the world they're growing up in is incredibly complex compared to the one I grew up in. And you're going to hit roadblocks, and those roadblocks could be people. They could be your lack of skill. They could be your own attitude. But you got to figure out, if you want something, how to get it, and how that really, if you take control of it and you have that growth mindset, which I know is a key term we use a lot, but if you have that, you can honestly get anything done. You know, you can break down just about any roadblock that gets put in front of you. And with that is, I think, important is a want to understand, not just a want to do well and a want to know things, but a want to understand why that thing is the way it is, and why it applies, and you know, that why question game that you play when you're little just to make your parents mad, I think is important in the classroom. You know, why, you know, why are we doing this? I challenge, maybe my colleagues don't like it as much, but I challenge my kids, you know, ask your teachers why. You know, why are we doing this? Why is that important? You know, have them explain. And if the teacher can't do it, it's a good learning moment for the teacher too, to step back and say, okay, why are we doing this?
Right.
And why is this important to the kids? Not just because we've always done it. So, you know, that self-reflection is probably the third thing, you know, being self-reflective and recognizing who you are, your strengths and weaknesses, and making sure that you're in that self-reflection, humble enough to recognize that you need change, you need to improve, and that you don't necessarily deserve something if you didn't earn it. So.
Okay. So you really take time to make connections with students through all the different things you do. We mentioned the TED Talks and the poetry slams and the projects in your classroom. What are some connections that you've made that really stand out?
When you show me the script, there's so many. Like just today, a few alumni came into the building to see me. I was trying to think of something, but probably the best story I could think of was Sarah Flugel. I think you know who she is.
Yes.
So she transferred in sophomore year, out of the district. Well, at least from Clarkson schools, and she's brand new to the school. She doesn't have any friends. She doesn't really know anybody. And she's got a super dynamic personality, which, you know, I think helped us click right away. But at the time, there was this MRSA scare in the building. And for fun, I said, you know, the kids don't really know you. I want you to not come to class right away, but stand outside the door. And I'm going to tell the kids, like, Sarah's not here. We got to be careful. We just found out she has MRSA. So, you know, if you were sitting by her, you might need to get yourself checked out. And there was a lot of very high anxiety girls that sat by her, and they were freaking out. They're like, oh my God, are you serious? And this and that. And then Sarah comes in and goes right to her seat and sits down, and they all clear out. And you know, it took, I knew right then we were going to get along great. You know, it took so much courage for her to do that in a new environment. And, you know, that relationship from there forward, like knowing her, getting to know her personality and who she was as a person, right from the get-go, one of the first weeks of class, only built over the next 3 years. And she ran the poetry slam for me and was in IB. And, you know, now I have her brother, and I've gotten to know her family, and she's come back to visit me, and she babysits my kids, you know. And that's just one example of how I feel teaching and learning needs to be. You know, knowing your students on a personal level, and making sure that you and the students are a part of the same community, that you don't exist in two separate worlds. To know that as a teacher, you're forming the kids who are going to be adults in your community, you know, that will eventually have their own children that might interact with your children. I think those connections are pretty important. So.
And I know Sarah is in Chicago now, right?
Yeah,
and has a passion for dancing and theater. And
she's doing really well.
Excellent, thank you. So if there's any single thing you could change in education, what would it be and why?
Maybe to go back to the high-tech, high example, tear down walls, literal and figurative, like more big open spaces, less industrial seating, less industrialized old school education. Again, I think desks and rows, the way that we've done it for so long is meant to deliver content, and we can get content on a smartphone. I would love to see education go more open, with a little more freedom and trust, and be more about, I don't know, experiences. Get rid of the bells, maybe. I think just these kids, this generation is ready for something like that. Maybe we weren't when we were younger, that our society depended more on that structure, but I think these kids appreciate the experiences that they have in school that aren't traditional, and they thrive on it. So if anything, I'd probably do that.
And I think I've seen that in the opportunities that you give kids to learn, and the leadership opportunities that they just blow us away with what they can accomplish and how they can think.
They blow my mind all the time, all the time. When you really give them the freedom to show who they are and demonstrate what they know, they surprise you in good ways. So.
Well, Ryan, I'm really grateful to you taking the time to be on the show, and for the way that you engage with students and the difference you make in our community. And I don't think there's anything more powerful than listening to a teacher talk about a philosophy and then being able to walk in that teacher's classroom or into an auditorium where kids are sharing their poetry and see that passion or that philosophy come to life. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for your support in that.
Thank you for tuning into the show.